Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to this new session of the Collaboration and Unity Basics course. On today's session, we will be covering mainly the Unity editor. So we will go over a bunch of stuff, starting with getting familiarized with the folder structure that we will have to, like we often use on the Unity project. But this is a little bit up to you guys. Like you can decide to change it. It's however you feel more comfortable. But I will just give you how I do it and how it's more standardized. As well, then we will start working on importing some assets from a package that I will show you guys. We will create a scene. We will start making our backgrounds, creating some of the layers, and assembling our main scene. In this process, I will recommend you guys, if you haven't watched the previous episodes of this course, just go into my YouTube channel or into the new media channel as well, and you will be able to see the previous recordings. Now, in that way, you can catch up and start from the very beginning. So here, as you can see, the website that I'm showing there, my website, you will be able to find the course that I'm talking about. I will be posting way more courses, but here are the two main classes that we already went through. So we went through how to set up our collaboration using Git and how to use GitHub as our main repository, and then we installed something called Git Kraken. After that, we started looking into how to download Unity using the Unity Hub, creating our first project and understanding how to set up Unity with Git. Then we were able to set up our project in our repository in GitHub and clone it into our Git Kraken. Then we started doing a full analysis of like the main basic tools that we can use on the Unity editor and like the windows and some of the tabs, which of course I will have to talk for hours to be able to cover a lot of the tools that Unity has, but we were able to cover some of the basics so you can move around. Before I start with today's session, I want you guys to fix a little issue that I found on the gitignore that we created last time, like here in this step. So remember that I was telling you that the gitignore, it's a file that tells Git what to track and what not to track. So basically, what to ignore from your files. We are using this page, which for the most part is pretty reliable, but sometimes it gives you some trouble. And that's why today I want to make sure, guys, that you see what's the problem here and like we can go and fix it right away. So I want to go into our project. So let's go everybody to our Unity Basics. That's the project that we were working last time. If you don't have it as well, I have the GitHub repository public, so you guys can just clone it, so you can pretty much follow along what I'm doing. But if we go here and we also open our Git Kraken, if we see here, when we added our gitignore and then we added our project, we missed that it only added the assets and the project settings. But I told you guys that the packages folder was also pretty important to have. So we require this in order for Unity to be able to recreate the packages that we are importing. So other developers, when they pull the code, they are able to reproduce it. At this moment, when you go to this package folder, you will see there's only a manifest. Basically, that manifest, what it's telling us is that which are the packages and which version we should download when the project is open and they don't exist. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open our gitignore. For some reason, like it's not tracking, so an easy way to look for that is we're gonna go and Control F to find in our file just this word. Is basically the package without the P, because the rules in the gitignore most of the time are either similar to this li library which is basically to cover both the capital L and the lowercase l. So the same for the packages. So we are gonna go here, we see unit packages, that's fine. But then here we got into the nugget packages. So this is something that, yeah, it should not be tracked for the nugget packages, but for Unity is taking it as well. It's like saying, oh, I found that you are having packages not being tracked, which is not good for us. So what we're gonna do here, just a quick fix, is we are gonna add this. So we don't want we want Unity Git to track. So as soon as I do that and I hit save, Git here is gonna tell me like, yeah, you made a change in the gitignore here, and that made a change making the manifest being able to be committed. So I'm just gonna go ahead and save here, and we can put both together. Fix.git ignore not tracking packages folder. We will commit this. So this is not like that common that happens, but sometimes it can happen. And you as a developer, the idea is that you keep an eye on these little problems that may happen, that may appear. Sometimes it will, like, you will be able to find out when another developer downloads the project and it looks broken, like maybe they have missing references, some packages are not there, and that's the reason. But sometimes it's different reasons. And that might be because you have a gitignore that is not well configured. All right, now that we already fixed that, and I already pushed, we have the fix. Now we are tracking our packages folder. So whatever package we import into our project will be tracked now, which is great. So now let's go ahead and start with our Unity project. So as we said last time, we are using the hub, the Unity hub, to manage our projects and our versions. So if we go to the projects, we will be able here to find the projects that we are using. So the Unity basics. We are gonna go ahead and click it. I already did, so we don't waste time looking into how it takes time to reload things and reopen things. So we have here our project. We cover most of the windows that you see here last time, and you will see that most of the projects on Unity will look pretty much like this one when you open them, like a 2D project. You only have a scenes folder with the sample scene that is basically this scene that you have here without pretty much anything. So I'm gonna start ahead and creating some of the folders that I often use, just so it's a little bit more organized and we know where are things. Because remember that from this window, the project window, is where we can drag basically everything that will go into our project, like into our hierarchy or into our scene. So in order for us to be able to get what we need, it's good to have a good organization, like folder structure. If we don't do that, then we will end up having like a lot of missing assets that we don't know where they are, or maybe we have duplicates, which is not great, but it's a good practice. So everything that we created, as we said last time, it will be under our assets folder, and all of our scenes will be in our scenes folder. Some people will change the name of this and they will put like this, just so that folder will always remain on top. And it's easy to, like, when you need to change between scenes, like the folder is always on top. But in my case, it doesn't really bother me to go on and look for the scenes that is always like around here, or like down here, because it's ordered alphabetically. So it's fine, but like you can do that little trick, it might help you. Okay, so aside from our scenes, there are a couple of things that we will require in our project and are pretty common. So in a 2D project, for example, we are gonna require another folder, which is gonna be called sprites. Okay, This folder will have every single sprite that we import in our project. So we know that like everything is in here, we can drag it and drop it from here. Another very common, like this is for every single project. You will probably won't see a project that doesn't have this folder, and it's called scripts, which will hold all the scripts that we create in our project. Scripts is important to have them there because of organization basically as well. But when you get into a more advanced point, then you will need to have your scripts in a specific folder if you start doing like assembly references or things like that. I'm not gonna talk much about it because that's a little bit too in depth and I will probably confuse you guys. Okay, so now that we have that folder, we will also require a very important one that it's mainly for you. Like if you see here, since you can relate to a different like development project as like your front end basically. This is what you are gonna show. That this is where you have kind of like your views or something like this. The scripts, well, it's pretty self-explanatory, and your sprites is like the assets, like the 2D assets that you have in your project. But this specific folder that I'm gonna create, which is called prefabs, this folder it's mainly created here in Unity, and we are gonna go later on and explain what's a prefab in Unity. But prefabs are very, very powerful. They have existed quite a long time ago, but I remember a time when the prefabs will only track like the base object, and I always wish to have like nested prefabs. If someone knows about Unity, they will know what I'm talking about. But nested prefabs were launched in Unity a couple of years ago, and it was a great addition. But we will not be using them too much here because there's not too much point like on these kind of projects. But it was worth mentioning. All right, now that we have those folders, I think I'm gonna create a couple of more that are pretty important. So another folder, it's the materials, and since we are not actually using like 3D objects in this specific project, we don't need textures. But often when you see projects like there are 3D projects, you will see that the materials folder is called materials and textures because it holds the materials plus the textures that you require. We won't use them today or like in this session, so I'm just gonna leave it as materials. I'm going to create another one which I really like, and it is the animations. This one will have all the animations for our player, for our enemies, for maybe something in the game that also moves. Whatever animation we create, we are gonna keep it in here, unless it's of course like animation made by a script. That will be just a simple script or maybe a prefab. Okay, I think I'm not missing anything else. Those are like the core ones that we're gonna be using. Those are the folders that we require. All right, so now that we have that there and we understand how our structure is, let's go ahead and go here into our course material. I have prepared here these 3 folders that will let us build basically the game we said we were gonna create. So just if we wanna go and see it again one last time, I'm gonna show you guys what I am talking about. Like we have 3 different packages that will have different assets that we will require. The first one, which we're gonna import shortly, is the one that holds like the background and all of these tiles and these assets like the tree, the bush, and this kind of the things. So let's go ahead and do that. How do you import a package into Unity? That's actually very intuitive and very easy to do. So you just have to go into your package, like into your folder. I'm gonna just open it, and I just need the PNGs, objects and tiles. That's basically, here we have everything we need, right? And the tiles and the background we were just talking about. Okay, so I'm just gonna grab these objects and I'm just gonna drag them here. I know, like I could drag them under this folder, or because I have it selected, I can just drop them here. Now Unity is gonna start compiling those objects. Basically, it's also creating the meta files that we have always discussed that Unity has. So as you can see, every time that I created a folder, Unity created a meta file for myself. And if I go into my sprites, the same thing happened. Now, now that we have that, remember we always want to go into our project, and what we want to do is to always commit our things. So, for example, in this case, I won't be committing the folders unless I use them. So in this case, for example, the sprites, this is the sprite meta file plus the sprites. So I'm gonna go ahead. Actually, I just want to make it a little bit more organized, and you can do this, like you can organize this as however as you like, but I want to create a folder here which is called environment, which this one will have basically the environment for our, like, all of our game. I'm gonna just go ahead and drag this and put it inside. This is how you move things around. Like here, if you just notice, it's pretty easy. You just drag and drop things and that will change here. Okay, so now we have that. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna stage this folder, which will stage the sprites, and I'm gonna say add sprites folder with environment assets, right? Another thing to notice, if you have pay attention a little bit, when I am doing my commits, I say initial commit, add gitignore, update readme, add fix, add. I didn't say added sprites or fixed gitignore, updated gitignore, the readme or whatever. And that's just a convention that is used on Git, that you use it this way, because when then you do, for example, a pull request or a merge request, then how basically the computer will read it for you is like this commit or this merge request will fix your gitignore, will add the sprites. So it's in like a present, it's not a past tense, because it will be weird. Like this merge will added your sprites, that will be weird. Okay, so just make sure that you are adding your things with your comments and your specific details. So we have the history and we know, oh, here I added my sprites. That's when I did something wrong or something, right? Okay, so now that we have that, I'm just gonna go ahead and see. Unity provides us with some like import settings for our sprites. So here we have a bunch of stuff which is pretty important to know about. Not that in depth, but I will tell you as we use some of them down the road. The type of texture is pretty important because that sometimes you will just get like a default and you won't be able to use it as a sprite, so you have to change it to a sprite. And sometimes you have a sprite that has multiple images. For example, you get the animations of a player, all of them in the same sprite sheet, basically, like in the same image. You can go ahead and say that it's a multiple, and then you can use the sprite editor to change it. Maybe in the future, in one of the next sessions, I will add just like a quick example so I can show you how to use the sprite editor, which is pretty cool and it's pretty good and very useful. For this case, we don't have any of that. As we can see here, all of our sprites are already broken into nice like tiles, and that's very convenient for us. We don't need to go and do that sprite editor, but it's good to know that it's there. Okay, another thing that I want to show you guys that we are gonna be using, and if we go here, is our pixels per unit. So this is basically how many pixels per unit on our on our sprite it will consume in the screen basically. So in this moment, this sprite is pixels per unit and of 100. So I'm just gonna go ahead and show you quickly. This is a quick test. I'm gonna put this here. You see, that's a way to just drag and drop. We're not gonna do it that way, but that's a way. Just a quick explanation of what happened there is Unity created a Unity object, right? Like a game object, this one. It changed the name to the same name as our sprite, arrow sign. It has the transform as we discussed last time. And it added a component called a sprite renderer because we need a sprite renderer to be able to render our sprites. And it got and it added our sprite into this box. So if I go ahead and change this, it will just change our thing. Notice that it's not changing the name, it's just changing what is being rendered. So this component is kind of like independent of this game object in a way, like it's not connected to the name or the transform right now. And I can change some things like the color. I can flip it. So if I flip, you can see it's flipped. We are gonna use this a lot. And it has like a sprite default material. This is the material that we will use for most of our sprites here in this game. Okay, we are not gonna cover this one, we will do it later, but what I wanted to show you is the pixels per unit. So if I go ahead and say I need 50 pixels per unit and I hit apply, you saw that like my object just increased. So now it looks bigger because it's covering more space, right? Like I needed less to cover that unit. So I just want to make that happen to all of these ones because they are not as important here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say 50 for all of these ones, and I'm gonna change it. And I wanna do the same for all of our tiles. 50 and apply. It's gonna take a little bit more time just because I have more objects. Okay, awesome. I'm gonna delete this guy. Cool. Okay, now that we have our environment and we have our background, it's time to start creating our scene, which is the fun part, right? So creating scenes, like in game development, it's an entire process. Like it's not just dragging and dropping, but in this case, we're gonna do it. But most of the times when you're building a game, how I encourage you guys to do it is to first, like on paper, draw how is gonna be the layout of your level, because you need to know like how many, like you see this is divided like with a gray. That has a reason, and it's because we have positioning, and we know we will be able to know like, okay, my player, I want him to jump 2 of these boxes, right? 2 units. If the player jumps 2 units, I know that my tiles cannot be higher up than 2 units between one jump and another, because then my player won't be able to jump. And it might not be because that's the idea, like, oh no, I don't want the player to be able to jump there. It's just because I did a miscalculation, and it will look like your game is just broken. So when you are start doing this, go ahead and make your paper version. Do it like in a grid like this, so you have your metrics. For now, we're just gonna try to match it. This is often how it's done when you are doing like game jams, where you are not able to go ahead and do like the pre-planning session and the game design of your game. You just go ahead and start working on it and then just play it, and if you have to alter something, you will go and do it. Unity is so powerful that it will let us do that without any